Okay, so a very good evening to one and all present here. I am Kritika Ghosh, an intern at Expert here, and I'll be helping out throughout our expert session today. Before we jump right in, I would request everyone present in the audience to please turn on their cameras if it's possible. It's a huge request. It really helps the speaker and helps set the tone of the session. So I would request all of you to turn on your cameras and wave a quick hi to our speaker today. Great. Okay. So without further ado, let's begin. I welcome everyone to this week's Expert Live session with Mr. Suraj Divakaran. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out and being here
Thanks.
with us this evening. It really means
Thanks,
a lot and
Kritika.
we appreciate your time. Yes, sir. And thank you so much to the audience as well for taking time out of their Thursday evening and being here with us today. So thank you to the audience as well. Now, before we jump right into the session, a little bit about the work done at Expert here so that if anyone has any questions. The mission at Expert is very simple. It's to enable learning beyond your organization. So when you're working in an organization, the only opportunity you have to upskill or grow your network is from either your supervisors or your immediate peers. And so there is very limited scope to grow beyond a certain point, as there is no specific school to go back to as well. But there should be, right? Because one should be able to access the experience, expertise, and knowledge of those who have excelled and are top leaders in the industry and in their respective fields. And this knowledge otherwise just simply remains restricted to them and doesn't trickle down to us, right? So here we are at Expert every week presenting the best of experts to you. Today we are here to learn all about building a content brand from digital marketing and content strategy expert, Mr. Divakaran. He is the Associate Marketing Director at Maxwell Group and also the founder of Digital Uncovered. Digital Uncovered is basically a team of writers and marketers committed to helping other marketers in India and overseas get the latest insights about digital marketing. He also has 11 plus years of experience in both B2B and B2C marketing and has worked with big names like Logitech, TCS, Infosys, Lenovo, and so on as their marketing manager. And Mr. Divakaran has scaled marketing efforts at several orgs with 1 million plus users. And his personal blog also hit 100K users this year. So, given all that, we are extremely excited, sir, to attend this session and learn about the current content marketing landscape and explore various frameworks with you and much more. So, over to you, sir.
Suraj bhai.
Hey, thanks, Kritika, for the introduction. I personally don't consider myself as an expert. I think all of us in this community are all trying to learn, and I don't think anybody who claims to be an expert is actually an expert because the domain itself is such a large domain that you probably might be good at one or two things, but you might not be good at everything. Right. And I'm sure that even people with 20, 25, 30 plus years of experience are still learning from each other. So I think Kritika, can you go about projecting the presentation? I think we can
Yes,
start.
sir. Yes, I'll start the presentation. Just a second.
So while Kritika projects the presentation, I think I had a very basic question for all the audience here, and I think we have 35, 36 odd people who have joined us today. How many of you are familiar with content marketing or are working for a brand which where you're managing content marketing? If you are any of those, can you raise your hand so that I get an idea of how many of you are familiar with content marketing? I think you can raise your hand. Okay, I think we have Rahul. Anybody else who wants to join Rahul? Okay, and we have Prakhar. Oh no. Oh, Prakhar is from Expert. Sorry. Yeah, it's a Thursday evening. I get it. Not the most exciting time to attend a presentation. But let's begin. I think people can continue answering while we start the presentation. So Kritika, can you go to the next slide? So I think Kritika has already briefly about some of the things that I've done. So I consider myself to be very fortunate because I've worked with both the B2C side and the B2B side, right? Most people end up either on the B2C side of things or on the B2B side of things when it comes to marketing. So I started off my career with a company called IMS. Then I was with Z for some time. And then from Z, I moved to Logitech, right? And from there on, it's been a more of a B2B kind of a journey where I was with TCS, Infosys, Lenovo, and currently with Maxwell. So I've seen both sides of the world and how content marketing works on both sides of the world. I have been maintaining a blog since 2012, which hit 100,000 monthly users this month. Right, so I can probably say that I'm hitting a billion users in a year's time, right? But then I'm talking about brands which are clocking a million visitors every month, right? Which is the most difficult thing to do. So before we go into content marketing, I just want to give you a context of what used to happen. Kritika, can you go to the next slide? So what used to happen 10, 15 years back, and even until I would say somewhere around 2009, 10, which is when I started my career, you always had a big idea, right? You would work with an agency or you might have an in-house marketing team. You would have a big idea. Then you would use that big idea to run a campaign, right? You would give legs to that idea. You will create a lot of assets for that idea. Then you will use media to sort of disseminate that content that you're creating around that idea, right? And this happens throughout the year, right? So a B2C brand might do 3, 4 campaigns in a year. A B2B brand probably might do one campaign every year, right? But this was the formula that was used, and continues to be used, right? You always have a big idea, then you have ad campaigns, and then you have media spends behind that ad campaign where you use print or you use television to sort of propagate that idea. So this is what used to happen until 10, 15 years back. Fast forward to now. Kritika, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So what used to happen in B2C is you have a big idea, then you have an ad campaign and you have media spends behind that ad campaign. And you used to repeat this couple of times in a year, depending upon what your sales cycle is like. And in B2B, it was very similar. The only difference was media usually meant mostly trade press. And then you had some direct emails, direct mailers that are sent out. Then you had PR and then you would repeat the process. Uh, Next slide, Kritika. So now what has happened is you have all sorts of things happening now. You have so 10 years back you had the internet, then you had social media, then you had analytics, then you had email, you had programmatic, and now you basically got lost sense of what is happening, right? Because you have so many channels that you can use, right? And an idea doesn't have to be an idea that is created for a ad campaign. It could be a as simple as a tweet that goes out and then becomes something, right? So the whole idea that the whole thought process that you had one idea, then you would take it out and do an entire media campaign around it is sort of a misnomer now, right? You would start off with something like a tweet that goes out and becomes something of an idea, then you use it as an ad campaign, right? So there are a lot of examples where a brand did something on social media which worked out really well and then sort of became an ad campaign, and then there is a full-fledged campaign around that. So what has happened is the feedback loop is much shorter. The earlier the feedback loop was much larger, right? Because what used to happen is it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to create a campaign, then roll it out, and by the time feedback comes to you, it's an year into the campaign. Right now with social media, there is immediate feedback. There is a very short feedback loop, right? The way the whole way the content marketing was approached has changed. Kritika, next slide. So what has happened is now everybody is churning out content, right? And organizations have turned into content spewing zombies because everybody wants you to download something, look at this video I have created, right? And that's also sort of shows the complexity, which means that there's so much content hitting the wall that people have no clue as to what to look at. Next slide. So the very simple question is, if you ask anybody who's into marketing now, will tell you that they're going to produce more content next year. So if I'm doing 100 assets this year, probably targeting 150 assets next year, right? Anybody who says that they're not investing in content marketing are probably lying to you, right? Because everybody is producing content. Because if you look at demand generation, or if you look at account-based marketing, or if you look at awareness in general, you need content to run it. Next slide, Kritika. But what happens is, when you're producing so much content, it usually ends up in some sort of a landfill, right? Because you're producing so much, right? And especially if you're in India, you're somewhere in the bottom of the landfill, because there's so much crap hitting you that you don't have time to consume it. So only content that really stands out has a chance to be seen and consumed by the viewer, right? Which sort of shows the complexity of the whole situation at this point in time. And this is happening globally. There's so much content being produced that nobody has the time to go through and read through it. Only the best content sort of survives it. Next slide, Pratika. And in India, the larger challenge that I see is that usually when a B2B brand says that I'm doing thought leadership, right? I'm creating white papers, I'm creating content that is really useful. In a lot of companies, what happens is thought leadership ends up being personal branding for the executive team, right? And that's the harsh reality of it, because the top management has no clue as to how to use content marketing really well, right? So usually the CEO, the COO, or somebody at the executive level wants to build his personal brand, his or her personal brand. So content marketing then sort of becomes a way for the executive team to sort of build their own thought leadership or their own personal brand instead of building the company's brand, which is a harsh reality. And you have ghostwriters writing content for executive team, and that all happens. The other thing that has been within India is, in India, when somebody says that hiring for content marketing, that person only ends up doing content writing. That's also a harsh reality, because the larger challenge is at the top level, the output is not defined, right? As to what is the content marketing person responsible for. So he or she ends up creating a lot of content, right? And 6 months into that, he or she starts feeling that whatever I'm doing is not making any difference to the company as such, right? What eventually happens is, you start getting evaluated on the input as opposed to with output. So input is as simple. Your boss will come and ask you, how many pieces of content did you create this month, right? So you are basically being evaluated on your input, as opposed to of all the content that you created, how much traffic has the content generated on the website, how many leads have the has the gated content generated, right? That is what you should be evaluated on. But because the output is not clearly defined, you start getting evaluated on the input. And this is a typical challenge with a lot of companies in India, and especially this becomes a big problem in B2B. And in B2C, you start looking at vanity metrics, like you start evaluating things like impressions and things like those, which again doesn't show any tangible impact that the work that you're doing has created. Next slide, Kritika. So in India, if you look at what is happening now, you realize that not everybody is a Binod to start off with, right? Not everybody gets it wrong. There are brands which know how to get this done. So if you're looking at B2C, there is Swiggy, there is Zomato, which talked about a lot. There's Flipkart, which used to do great deal of work when they started off. Now I think Web Chutney still continues to do a great job for them, but I somehow feel it's diluted. And Amul has been a consistent performer, right? They have their topical pieces of content that go out practically every day, and they have created a process that probably very few companies in India can replicate. There is an agency called Dakunha Communications which manages that for them. And internationally, if you look at Burger King, does a really good job. Nike is already always talked about for all the campaigns that they do. Personally, a brand that I like a lot is John Lewis, which does really good work. They don't do a lot of campaigns, but they do a really good job of the campaigns that they roll out every Christmas. And in India, there are a lot of brands which are catching up. There is Zoho, there is Chargebee, there is Freshworks, there is Browser Stack. And internationally, among my personal favorites when it comes to B2B is Wistia, there is HubSpot, there is MailChimp, there is Ahrefs. And what you would notice with a lot of these brands is it's not that they're completely dependent on the agency to do this. So I've marked all the brands which have an in-house content creation team. Swiggy, Zomato, Freshworks, Chargebee, Wistia, MailChimp, all of these brands have an in-house content creation team, but they also work with agencies. So that's the model that we are moving to as of now. Next slide, Kritika. So the question is, how do you create a great content brand? And I don't think there is a formula that exists. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people, a lot of gurus out there, right, from Neil Patel to Brian Dean to everybody else that you can follow in the content marketing space. What you will realize is that everybody has an idea of how things have to be done, but nobody has a sure shot formula to success, right? There are some basic principles that you have to follow when you're creating a content brand. Kritika, next slide. So I think there are five principles that I personally believe in, and some of this is also coming from some international experts who've done this. So one is the ability to tell galvanizing stories, because at the heart of content marketing is stories, right? It's that's what defines a brand, right? You will be known for the stories you create. The second is you have to move from being a boring brand to a brave brand, which means you have to take risks. And this applies largely to B2B brands because B2B brands are completely risk averse. They would never take risks. They would always go about doing things the old fashioned way. And I can think of a lot of Indian brands without naming them who are, I mean, who wouldn't never want to take any risks, right? And this also applies to some B2C brands where they want to play safe. They wouldn't participate in any topical discussions that would happen, right? And now if you look at a brand like Zomato would always take a risk, right? They would participate in all the topical discussions, even in spite of the fact sometimes it would backfire. But the more important thing is they keep trying. The third important thing is you need a content engine which creates consistency. So if you look at Amul, they've been very consistent, right? The topical content happens every day practically, right? Because they've created a process in place and an agency in place which does that for them on a very, very regular basis. The fourth is very important thing is that you have to be result focused as opposed to input focused. What happens in a lot of content marketing teams across India is that you get evaluated on the input, right? So you evaluate it based on number of pieces of content you produced, as opposed to what is the result that you delivered, whether it was 1 million visits on the website, whether it was the conversions that happened, right? And that's a very peculiar problem which needs to be solved. And I think some of it also boils down to the top management and how they approach the whole content creation, content marketing process. And fifth and the most important, which I have personally learned, is that content marketing takes time. It's not that you start today and 6 months from now you will have something to prove, right? This is why I should exist within the company. Sometimes it could take 2-3 years, right? So the company has to be invested in the process. Kritika, next slide. So what I want to do is of all the 5 principles that I've spoke of, I want to give you examples of brands that do this really, really well. So Burger King is a brand which does this really, really well. They do at least, from what I know, 7 to 8 large campaigns every year, right? And they put their heart and soul into those campaigns. But what also stands out with Burger King is Burger King is a challenger brand, right? So challenger brand has to challenge the status quo in the market. So the prevailing market leader is McDonald's, right? So they have to be bold and imaginative. They have to take risks when they put out a campaign. So one of the campaigns that they did last year was around the whole moldy burger, where they wanted to talk about that we have a product that doesn't use any artificial preservatives. And I think this also came from a lot of YouTube videos which were created by people where people were basically storing the French fries in a jar and or a burger in a jar and seeing that when was that particular product getting um, bad in flavor or something like that, right? So what they did is they created this campaign which was around moldy burger, which they wanted to show that the product is made up of no artificial preservatives. And what did what the campaign did for them is the sales went up by 14%, right? They were able to create a perception in the market that their product uses natural ingredients, right? And this gave them a lot of mileage in the market, right? There are obviously a lot of there's also a lot of criticism around the whole campaign, right? Because a lot of people found very difficult to look at this campaign because what was happening to the burger. But the more important thing is that they were willing to take that risk, and I think it took them almost around 1.5 2 years to plan the entire campaign, get all the approvals in place. Because with a campaign like this, and I'm sure that you go to your internal executive team trying to approve this campaign, you will always have a challenge, right? They might come back and say, no, this could backfire, right? But they took the chance, they did it, and it worked for them. Next slide, Kritika. Personally, this is a campaign that I really like. State Street is a very large financial firm based out of Wall Street. So they had launched a fund called the She Fund, and they wanted to promote it. So what they did is they created a statue and placed it opposite the charging pool, which is in Wall Street, right? They wanted to. This was a fund that was investing in companies which had female CEOs, and they wanted to create awareness around this. So this particular campaign, the statue that which was placed in Wall Street next to the charging bull was supposed to be removed, I think a week or two from it was placed, but there was so much buzz and conversation around the whole campaign that it stayed for an entire year. The statue is now been moved from where it was placed to a different place in Wall Street, but it continues to be there. Whereas it was supposed to be a topical kind of a campaign, but it stayed for a long time. And as you see from the results, it made a huge difference to the brand. And financial firms don't get talked about much, right? You would never hear a financial firm doing a really good work in terms of advertising. So this is one of the best campaigns that came out in the last 2 3 years. I think you should look at the case study and read how they went about doing this. This was again a financial firm taking a huge risk and telling a very interesting story, right? The whole thing had a really good story included in it. Next slide, Kritika. So again, I said B2B brands typically, and if you look at State Street, they don't want to take any risks, right? It's all vanilla stuff. They keep doing it every year. So HP is one of those brands, right? But doesn't take a lot of risk, and they sort of mushroomed and transformed in the last 2 3 years. So they did a campaign called the Wolf, which was designed by their in-house team called HP Studios, along with an agency called Giant Spoon. And what they were trying to do is that this was for their printer business. This was not for their laptop business, and laptop business does a really good job with marketing. So what they did is they wanted to create awareness for the fact that the printers are vulnerable to security risks. So they created this whole short film with Christian Slater, which is very interesting to watch. And I'm sure that you should watch it and try and understand how they went about doing it. But what it did in the essence is that today there are 4 short films in the series, which is a testimony to the fact how well the entire campaign performed. And for the first time in several years, that B2B printer sales went up by 6%. Right? This is among the best B2B marketing campaigns that probably world has seen in the last, at least in the last 2 decades. And they have 3 more films in the series. There is The Hunt Continues, The Wolf and the Fixer, and The True Alpha. Right? And from there on, I think the brand has been able to take a lot of risk. I think a testimony to the fact that they have created an in-house content creation team called HP Studios, which has existed for almost around 5-6 years and has managed to create a really good campaigns. So the idea for the campaign came from the in-house team. Then they worked with a production agency called Giant Spoon to sort of develop it. Next slide, Kritika. This is again a brand that I don't know whether you've heard of it. So Drift is, I think, not an old company. It's around 7-8 years old from what I know. And Drift was the first company in the space which came up with this whole idea of conversational commerce. So they have a marketing automation tool. What that does is it includes a chatbot on your site, and they wanted to promote it. And this was a time that I don't think there was any other company in the space. There was Olark, which was trying to do it, but Polark had not taken off in the market. So they came up with this whole campaign that people no longer want to fill up forms, right? And they would want to they would want to talk to a human being, right? So they came up with this whole campaign called No Forms, and that campaign was a huge hit. And because of which, what Drift was able to do is it created the whole category called conversational marketing today. There are a lot of companies in the space now. There is Conversica, there is Drift, there is a company called Instant, which recently got acquired by Zoom Info. Now everybody wants to get into this game, but Drift single-handedly created this market. Right? Until then, conversational commerce as a market didn't exist. So this was a low-key campaign. All they did was they had the whole philosophy around why nobody should fill up a form and why chatbots and conversational commerce will take off. And what they did is to live by the example. They eliminated all the forms on their website. So if you go to Drift website today, there are no forms. Literally, there is only one form that you have to, which they couldn't remove because that was the form that they had created for the trial of the product. But everything else is automated through the Drift chatbot. So you can go there, have a conversation. It captures all the details, right? And this has taken off very big time. I mean, you can see the Drift bot being used in several websites. The company is valued at around $500 billion now, which goes on to tell you how big that market is now, and everybody is trying to catch up. And Drift has single-handedly created this entire category. Kritika, next slide. Okay, so what I want to give you also is there are several frameworks that I can talk of. So how do you go about doing this, right? This is all great, right? You've seen brands doing this, doing great campaigns, right? So there is this model called Hub Hero Help. What it basically does is the simplest way to understand this is, and if you've grown up in the 90s and the 80s, you had Doordarshan, and what used to happen in Doordarshan is you had the Chitrahar, which used to come on a Sunday, which is like the hero content for a Doordarshan. Then you had Nukkad and other series, which used to happen on a weekly basis, right? Which is like the hub content, right? Which is TV shows and web serials that you can watch on a weekly basis. You had Chitrahar, which was the hero content which used to happen in the weekend, right? And then you had some other stuff that used to happen, like the 1 hour TV show, the news show that used to come, and some other stuff that used to happen on the site, on the channel, right? So the simplest way to understand Hub Hero Help is that you have a model to look at how the company is approaching the content. So if you look at Red Hat today, and Red Hat is a brand that doesn't get talked about as much as some of the other brands which create a lot of content. So for the longest time, I think they've been maintaining a site called opensource.com, which gets millions and millions of visitors. Not many people know that Red Hat operates that site. So this single-handedly created this whole category of open source, which explains why IBM paid so much money to acquire Red Hat. Right, and then they have Red Hat Summit, which is a hero content that happens every year. Then they have a lot of short films that they've created, which have won a lot of awards, like Open Source Stories. Command Line Heroes is their podcast that happens on a weekly basis. They also created a entire short film called Creating Chris, which talks about how open source is being used by the healthcare community. Then they have resources which go out, like it's the vanilla content that goes out every week, every day from Red Hat, right? And then there is some always on content that happens, like you have customer success stories, you have Red Hat community, you have the Red Hat social media channels. The more important thing to understand is, though they have an agency, they have created an in-house content creation team, which sort of manages this for them. Next slide, Kritika. So again, how do you apply this model? And I have applied this model on several brands to understand what they're doing, right? So this is very interesting because when you apply a model, you get an idea, or you have a framework to understand how the brand is approaching the whole content marketing process. So if you look at Moz and apply the same model, they have tools, a lot of free tools that are there on the website, which helps them to get a lot of visitors to the site. So you have Open Site Explorer, you have Keyboard Explorer, you have the Moz bar, which is used by a lot of people because it's a free tool, right? You can check the business listings. Then you have the business console, which again gives you data about local SEO. And then there is MozCon, which is their flagship event, which happens on a yearly basis. And always on content, you have Whiteboard Friday. I don't know whether you've seen any of the Whiteboard Friday videos that Ryan Fishkin has created. When he created, for at least for the first 5-6 years, he didn't get much traction. Today, each video that gets uploaded for Whiteboard Friday, and Ryan Fishkin is no longer associated with Moz. They still have other people doing it. Gets around 3 to 4 lakh hits, right, in a month or two's time after the video gets published. Right, and Rand's blog is pretty popular if you are someone who's into SEO like I am. His content is like the de facto content that he would go to. Now that Ahref and Semrush have gotten a little aggressive, people don't talk about Moz as much, but they did a really good job for the first 10-15 years after they started. And in the normal help content, they have how-to articles, they have guide. So anybody who's starting off in SEO will always go and read the SEO guide from Moz for both on-page and off-page SEO. And then they managed to build a content around, they managed to build a community around the whole thing. Okay, so when you look at the Moz or Red Hat or any of the brands that do this, the more important thing to understand is they've created a center of gravity. The center of gravity is around their content so that people keep coming back to them. Right, you have all sorts of content that are available on Moz, which helps you to become a better SEO practitioner. Next slide, Kritika. And this is a brand, HubSpot is a brand that everybody talks about in the market. And if you are in the B2B SaaS space, HubSpot gets talked about practically by every Tom, Dick and Harry in the space. Because what they managed to do is, and this is a very interesting example, because what they've not just managed to do is create a lot of content, but they've also created a space that they can completely own. So they coined this term called inbound marketing, which is nothing new. It's basically content marketing that helps you to get people to your website, come to your website, and read the content on your site, and then eventually become a customer of yours because you're providing value to them. They just created a term called inbound marketing, and they spent a lot of money around it. A lot of content was created around it over last 5, 10, 15 years. Now they own this term. And if anybody says inbound marketing, it means HubSpot, right? And there are a lot of companies which have adopted this model and they talk about it. So that's the space that they've created for themselves. A similar example in the B2C space is Mercedes. When everybody was saying second-hand cars, right? They created a term called pre-owned cars, right? And there have been the company was doing SEO for it. The SEO folks were saying you're creating a new term, right? Nobody is going to search for this. So they practically created the term pre-owned cars. Today, if you search for pre-owned cars, at least in US, Mercedes shows up for all the keywords and related phrases around that particular term. And their blog is very popular. I think they've done some 35,000 blog posts over the last 5-10 years. There is a lady called Aja Frost. I think if you get a chance, you should listen to her, how she went about creating this. So it's the largest blog on the planet. And they get around 7 million visitors. Neil Patel sort of competes with HubSpot, right? He considers HubSpot as his competitor. And there's a very interesting case study around how Neil Patel has sort of competed with HubSpot. So he bought a tool integrated onto his site called Ubersuggest because he couldn't beat HubSpot, right, in terms of content creation. So now that tool has been integrated into Neil Patel's site, he gets a lot of traffic because of that. Otherwise, he was finding it very difficult to compete with HubSpot because HubSpot was churning out so much content on a weekly, monthly basis that you can't compete with them. And if you take any marketing keyword or phrase, they would show up for all the keywords and phrases that you can think of. And then they have the training academy, which has a lot of people who certified themselves as HubSpot experts. And now they've created their own podcast network. They've acquired a company which was into newsletters. They're also investing a lot in their training academy and other activities. So this is largely their story. Kritika, next slide. So what G2 has done, which is again a company which is very focused on results, they've replicated the topic cluster model that HubSpot created, which is where you define a higher level topic and then you create subtopics around it. So you have a hub and spoke kind of a model for content creation. So they adopted the model that HubSpot created, which is around inbound marketing, and they were able to grow their traffic from basically nothing to a million visitors every month. And they did this in less than 12 months time. There is a very good article about how they went about doing this, which you can go and read. Today, they have a team of around 40 people who are only working on content. And that's how they went about doing this. So the whole approach is that while they adopted the HubSpot model, they also went about refining it a bit by uh, what they would do is they would pick one topic, like they would pick event marketing. That, let's say, that's the hub topic, that's the top level topic. They would go about creating 20 to 40 pieces of content for the next 3 months only for that topic, and not focus on anything else, right? So today, if you look at G2 site sort of directly competes with HubSpot in terms of traffic, because of the work that they put into doing this. And similar to HubSpot, they're also venturing into podcasts, and they're creating a contributor network to grow their efforts. So it's not just the traffic on the blog as such. Next slide, Kritika. Okay, so this is a graph that I personally like, and I've seen this in action with a lot of companies that I have worked for, and this is where people lose confidence in their ability to do content marketing. People say that content marketing takes time. It takes around 6 to 9 months to see results, but it could be longer, right? And my personal experience is it could take even 2 to 3 years, right? Because when you're starting off, you have no idea about how to go about it. So there is a very interesting chart by Paul Graham and Trevor Blackwell, which is around startup curve. And I've sort of done this, I've sort of adapted that for creating a content marketing growth curve. So when you launch and until the valley of death that you see, there's not much that happens on the site, right? Your traffic grows, it fluctuates, it falls at certain point in time because of all algorithm changes. After a certain point in time into your content creation or your content marketing journey, is probably 1.5 2 years into, is when your site slowly starts taking off. And if you do everything right, you can reach a stage where it reaches escape velocity. So escape velocity is where it's a scientific term. It's where you have so much content on your site that you, even with minimal effort, your traffic keeps growing, right? Very few companies reach that stage. So G2 has probably reached that stage where it has 1 million visits every month on its site, right? So everything that you throw at the wall works for you, right? That doesn't happen in the initial stages, because in the initial stages, your domain authority is low. People don't know about you. You probably don't even rank for some of the branded keywords. But this whole process, the more important thing to understand is this whole process takes time, and you have to stay invested for 2 to 3 years to see some results out of it. Next slide, Kritika. Okay, so this is again a very interesting chart, and this is in reference to brand building and sales activation. So this is based on a research that a gentleman called Peter Field did in UK, where what they looked at is they looked at all the campaigns which won the awards, and they looked at what happens when a brand does both brand building and sales activation. So if you join a company as a CMO, you would be asked to focus on both, right? But the focus on short-term sales activation will be more, right? And if you do brand building, which is in my case, I would say content marketing, content creation. So content creation will start showing results 6 months into you starting off with the activity. And 3 years from now, what happens is when you are uh, content creation and content marketing works out really well, it starts showing results. So until the first 1.5 2 years, you don't see a lot of results coming in from brand building. So usually the executive team would say, if there is no result coming out of it, let's shut it down, right? uh, so that's where the problem is, right? So if you're trying to build a brand, it takes time. It takes around 3 years to see some sort of results coming out of it. Whereas short-term sales activation, whether it's performance marketing or whether it's email marketing, you'll start seeing results immediately. And what happens if the CMO is not able to do both, which is sales activation and brand building, he gets fired. He does one thing really well, he gets fired, right? So very few CMOs. The average tenure of a CMO now is around 34 months, which explains what happens, right? In 3 years, you have to do both well. If you don't do both well, you get fired. As simple as that, right? Because what happens is you keep spending on sales activation, your cost per lead has to come down, and that will only come down if you invest in brand building, which is where the whole content marketing piece comes in. Yeah, next slide, Kritika. So there's this gentleman called Bill Bernbach, and he's someone who's very popular. He was the one who set up the agency called DDB, and I really liked his line, which is and principles endure, formulas don't, which is basically you can't go about following a Brian Dean or a Neil Patel or somebody in the market and say who I'll replicate whatever he's doing, because it doesn't work, right? It's a formula, and what happens in the market at this point in time is, so Brian Dean came up with something called as the skyscraper technique. I don't know how many of you know about it. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the market is replicating that same idea, and what happens is over time, because the idea is being overused, it stops working, right? And that's the problem with following all the gurus. You should have some basic principles in place and work towards your goal, and not follow somebody's formula. Okay, I'll give you a growth hack, right? This will triple your traffic. It doesn't happen, because the moment somebody comes with a growth hack, everybody starts replicating it and stops working, right? And also the person who's going to come up with a growth hack is not going to share something which is very recent. So when Brian Dean shared the idea of skyscraper technique, he was using it for 4 or 5 years and he had switched to something else. That's when he sold his old idea to everybody, right? So always have some base principles. That's how you go about building a content brand. Next slide, Kritika. So that's all I had, and I think I have eaten up a lot of time. So I think we have a good 20 minutes to take any questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for that presentation. It was incredibly informative, and I personally thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. So, yes, we do have time for a few questions. So, if anyone in the audience has any questions, put it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask all your questions. Just a second. Stop sharing.
Yeah, I
So
was. Yeah.
yeah, we have a question in the chat box here. Should I read?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Rahul Josh is asking, like, does the same idea of bold content hold ground in niche segments like risk management?
Yeah, see, the more important thing to ask is that um, if you are a market leader, you probably can be a little risk averse, right? You because you've already got a large market share, you don't have to think about building your brand much, because you already, if you, let's say you have a Ryan share market of 60, 70, 80%, you probably can be risk averse. But if you're a challenger brand or you're trying to create a new category, you have to be bold and imaginative. You will have to shift the status quo in the market. So there are brands that I can think of. So if you think of Burger King, why is Burger King so aggressive against McDonald's? Because if Burger King doesn't take risks, nobody's going to talk about them. They are one third the size of McDonald's. McDonald's has what, 20, 30,000 restaurants. Burger King is one third the size. So they'll have to do it. So if a niche segment like risk management, I feel you have to think through how can you talk about it and how can you talk about it differently from market. So what HubSpot did, and HubSpot was created when a lot of marketing automation tools already existed. They created this whole idea around inbound marketing, and they propagated it for 3, 5, 10 years. So they now own that whole space. So if you think of inbound marketing, there is only one company that comes to mind, because they've single-handedly created that term, and now they own that term, right? So you have to be creative about how you talk about your brand and how can you make it simpler for your audience.
Okay. I hope that answered your question. So the next one, it's from Pavan. What challenges do the companies face in the initial phase while gathering fund for their further functions?
So when he says funds, is he referring to marketing funds, or is he referring to the startup raising funding?
Pavan, could you please come on the mic? Startup, sir. Startup.
So And I got this question recently from a friend of mine who's trying to pitch his business to VCs.
Hmm.
So my simple idea was that if you're creating a pitch deck and the pitch deck has 8, 10 slides, what are people going to remember about you? If you look at something like an Ola, all people can remember is Bhavesh Agrawal went to Bandipur in a cab. He reached there. He had a fight with the cab driver, and the cab driver refused to take him back to Bangalore. Right? That's the whole story you remember, and that's how Ola started, right? And if you look at Airbnb, and if you look at any other startup, you need a really good story that sticks, right? And your job as a content marketer is to create that story. Why this company exists? How did it come into existence? And is there an interesting story around it? And let's say there is no interesting story around it. Your job is to create a story and then propagates that story, because that is what is going to give you the funding. It's not going to be whether how many bells and whistles your product has. Obviously that is important, because when you're talking to the VC, he is going to look at how this company came into existence, how good the founders are, and whether there is an interesting story behind it. He's not going to remember the facts and figures after some point in time.
Makes sense, sir. Makes sense. Okay, the next question is from Shubham. What do you think about B2C model? Is it a game changer for the bigger brands because of the pandemic?
I think B2C model has existed for all the time. I think the way I look at B2C and B2B is B2B ends up being so I think the usual thing that people think is B2B people use the rational side of the brain,
Yeah.
and B2C is more of impulse purchase, brand recall, and things like this. So today what is happening is that if you look at Zomato or a Swiggy or a Dunzo, all those brands are trying to do is capture your attention,
Yeah.
but it doesn't
Very
happen
true.
much in the B2B side, right? So what they do is, that's the reason that B2B, B2C brands invest so much time in creating topical content, because that allows you to capture the attention. Because if you have many players in the market,
Yeah.
that is what matters in terms of catching hold of someone's attention.
Yeah. So I guess that's when the growth marketing comes in the thing of like Zomato and so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is from Rahul again. Okay. What resources would you suggest for the novice content marketers to understand content marketing? Not just the fundamentals like planning and distribution, but also to understand the role of content in each part of the funnel.
Okay, there are a couple of ways you can go about doing this. So if you're looking for a structured course, you can opt for a course from Content Marketing Institute, or you can do, there is a free course from Coursera, which is around the strategy of content marketing by University of California, Davis. There is New York Times has a really good course on content marketing, which is around, I think, $1,400 or $1,500 if you can afford it. That's a really good course. And then there are local courses that you can take, right? But my advice to you is, and you can also read books. There are really good books. There is Everybody Writes by Anne Handley. There is On Writing by Stephen King, and a lot of other books that you can read. But more importantly, what is content marketing? It involves writing. It involves SEO, right? It involves some understanding of human psychology, right? Because if you're creating a CTA, how do you go about writing a CTA, right? Call to action,
Sweet.
right? And a lot of content is around today around capturing attention, right? So the content should have a logical flow. It should have um, um, should have a certain structure to it. So the best way to learn content marketing is either take up a side project, work for a company, and if you can't do both of those, create a website, start uploading content on it onto it, because then you have a very short feedback loop. You're creating content, you're
Mhm.
doing SEO, you're publishing it. 6 or 8 weeks into it, Google will tell you where you rank,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
definitely.
That process will teach you more than any book or any course that you're going to take, because everybody will tell you do this, do that. Oh, Burger King is doing this. It doesn't make sense to you,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
see, that's why I said formulas don't work, right? Because you go and join some company which is into a very niche space. So I work for a company which is into IP management space, right? Nobody knows about it. Then whatever you hear from a Neil Patel or Brian Dean might not work for you.
Hmm.
So the best
Makes
way
sense.
to learn it is do it yourself.
True, truly so. Okay, so next question is from Pawan again. Okay, where do you see D2C biz model in 5 years?
I don't know. So I see. I find it very funny because um, D2C model has always existed, right? I would say
Yeah.
D2C is B2C, right? And there are all these terms that are being created to confuse a little further. So what is inbound marketing? Inbound marketing is nothing but content marketing, right? This is just that HubSpot created the term around it to own the space, right? Another thing is called domain authority. So there is
Yeah.
nothing called domain authority, right? Rand Fishkin, out of a dream that he saw, came up with this term. Now everybody in the market says our domain authority kitna hai, if you're doing SEO, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is no difference between B2C and D2C. D2C market is going to take off in India for the simple reason itne sare consumers hai, right? And if you are into a really good category, it's going to take off. And what was called e-commerce some years back is now called D2C, right? What Flipkart kya kar raha hai, wahi karta hai na,
True.
right?
True.
There is a Flipkart to business wala thing, which is
Ah,
separate. So I think it's very important not to get, and there are now D2C programs also. There's one that expert sells. So I shouldn't say bad mouth about it, but I am saying don't get too mixed up in jargons because otherwise you wouldn't make sense of things.
yeah. True, sir. Okay. Next question is from Yuvraj. What is the best length of content in content marketing?
Yeah, best length of content depends upon a couple of things. एक तुम्हारा boss क्या बोल रहा है? Okay, but I'll tell you what is happening on Google at least, and I can't talk of other spaces because that's where sort of my understanding lies in. Any content, and what Google says, the SEO guideline says that 300 words का content बनाओ,
300 words.
publish करो. 300 words is the minimum that Google is suggesting. But now what is happening? There is a race that is happening, and the race is that you have somebody who's written 1,000 words, right? The guy who wants to outrank you will write 1,500 words, right? If you wrote 1,500 words, somebody will write a 2,000 word article. If you write a 3,000 word article, somebody will write a 4,000 word article. Okay, and that is happening in Google. If you look for some of the competitive phrases, like for instance, if you're looking at a phrase like content marketing guide, you will have to write at least 3 to 4,000 words
Definitely.
to rank for that particular keyword, and somebody will come and create a 7,000 word article, a 10,000 word article, right? So Brian Dean, if you check his site, he's got this very comprehensive guides. So he has went a step further. He has created a custom HTML page, right, which has content, and there's a lot of functionality in that custom HTML page, right? So it's not just a guide. He's also gone about redesigning the entire page itself, right? So I would say take as many words as possible to explain the topic, right? Because otherwise, um, there is the only caveat that I see is if your content is really thin, right? If it's 600 words, 300 words, there is something called as dwell time. And dwell time is basically Google looks at your site and looks at how much time do people spend on the page,
Yeah.
right? And if it's really low, then it affects your ranking. So ideal word count should be, I think, higher than 800 words. And the upper level, there is no limit, right? There's no limit to it. There are people creating 10,000 words, 15,000 words. Another thing to understand is if everybody is creating text content and you also try to replicate it. So somebody has created 15,000 words. Can you compete with him? No, right? Then what would you do? You would try to rank for a snippet, right? Or you would try to create a video, or you would try to create an infographic, right? So you take a sort of a shortcut to rank for that same
Rank for it.
keyword or phrase.
Yeah.
So you have to be really smart about it.
Yeah. Yes, guys. Anyone else? Okay, so another question from Rahul. Okay, for niche segments in enterprise B2B, like risk management, how do you conduct customer research? Because the because the decision makers who are often mid-level C-level executives aren't very active even on the LinkedIn.
Okay, so and I can talk about our company and what we did. So we caught hold of 4 or 5 customers, right? And existing customers, or you can catch hold of 4 or 5 existing prospects, right? And you can do an hour-long interview with them. You can give them something in return. You could give a discount on your product, or you could give some sort of a freebie for them, right? $100 Amazon voucher or anything that is of value to them. You can also give them some sort of a subscription to some risk management magazine, right? Spend an hour or so with them to understand how they are looking at the whole business. Why would they buy from you? What is the problem they're trying to looking to solve? So what we did is we picked 4 or 5 of our clients. We had an hour-long discussion with them. We recorded the entire discussion and then transcribed it. And if you read through it, you will get an understanding of what they think about it. What is your current perception? Then if you understand your current perception, then you can use that to create the whole messaging for your company, right? But also it is very important to note that when you do this, it's going to be biased to a certain extent, right? Because you're going to fix time with him and you're going to talk to him. So obviously he will not badmouth you in front of you. The other way to go about this is you can use some sort of a social listening tool to understand what people are talking about risk management in general, because that's going to be more unbiased. I think the new company that Ryan Fishkin has created, which is Spark Toro, is around this. So you can punch in keywords and you can see and understand what the audience is talking about. So there are tools that you can use, but if you don't have money for it, probably I would recommend doing a hour-long discussion with your customers, and that should give you a fair idea of how they think, what the challenges are, and then you have to come up with a idea to sort of propagate what is the kind of desired perception that you're trying to build.
Yes, guys. Anyone else?
Any more questions? We still have 2 minutes, I think, on the clock. So if anyone has any more questions, they can put it in the chat.
Yeah, we have got one question from Utkarsh. When creating content, should your site be focused on particular niche or should include much wider scope?
Okay, so there are two ways to approach this. The first approach is called Spaghetti framework. The Spaghetti framework is you've started a blog or you've started a website, right? You're not sure on what niche you want to write on. So Spaghetti framework is simple. You pick spaghetti and throw it on the wall and see what sticks, right? So what you will do is for the first 3 or 6 months, you will start creating content around different niches, right? And then you will realize that a content in a certain niche is working for you. So you will narrow your focus and only focus on that particular niche. So for instance, let's say you are a marketing company. Let's say you're running an agency, right? And you don't know whether you should focus on content marketing or whether you should focus on performance marketing or whether you should focus on SEO. So what you'll do is you'll start off with SEO, do that for first 3-6 months, see whether you will start off with all niches, see what works for you, and then you realize 6 months from now that SEO related content is working out for me. Then you'll focus on that niche for next 3 to 6 months. Right? That's one way to approach it. The other way to approach it is, let's say you are not just focusing on categories, you're focusing on multiple categories. I'm creating content around marketing. I'm also creating content around sales. I'm also creating content around finance, right? Then that's the Spaghetti framework will help you to narrow down on a certain niche. That's one way to look at it. Other way to look at it is that I will only create content around a certain niche and not focus on anything else. Because what happens in Google is there is something called as topical authority. And topical authority is basically, if I am creating content around SEO, after I create 20, 50, 60 articles, the algorithm that comes to your website starts making sense that this is an SEO related website. Right? What happens is if you're going to do everything under the sun in the first 6 months, the algorithm that comes to your site is unable to identify what niche is this site focused on. And that sort of becomes a challenge for you. So I think there are multiple ways of doing this. There is a company called Buffer, which used the Spaghetti framework to sort of figure out what they wanted to do. And after they found out this is what works for them, they narrowed down their focus and started doing that. But there are also companies which start off with saying that I will only focus on this niche, and that works to them. Because what happens is 6 months, 1 year into content creation, the algorithm all of a sudden starts making sense. Okay, this site is around SEO and they're writing about SEO. And over time, what happens is your traffic starts going up. And also another thing to this is that when you start off a site, the first 6 months, 12 months, you don't get any traffic from Google.
True.
Right? Even if you get something, it's going to be very marginal. So most of your traffic is going to come from direct and referral.
Yeah.
right? If your content is going, if your traffic is going to come direct and referral, which means that you're writing for a community and not for a search engine, at least for the first 6 months or 1 year.
Ah.
So what you should then do is create content that will be read by your community. That's what I call center of gravity. So today there are very few companies which do exceptionally well on Google, but also have a huge community that looks forward to their content. Right? Most sites only succeeded doing one thing really well. 95% of your traffic comes from Google, but you have no direct or referral traffic because community को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता तुम्हारे content से.
Sorry.
Right? That's one approach to look at it, because that's Google is the MyBab of traffic, right? That's where most of the content comes from, right? But you have to excel at doing both well, because otherwise what will happen is you might venture into a new category tomorrow, right? But if you don't have a community that you want to address, then you will have to again build everything from scratch.
Okay. Yes, Kritika. Yeah, go on.
No, I think there is one more question from Rahul. What is your opinion on Ashish Chopra's IUCTC framework for content marketing?
I can't clearly remember Ashish Chopra's framework, but it's been a while. See, what Ashish has been doing works exceptionally well for B2C marketing. And I've been following his content for the content that he's creating for Exigo for a while now. But I don't think much of it will work for B2B marketing, because what he's been doing is creating a lot of topical content. And if you're looking at B2B content, B2B marketing doesn't do as much topical content as B2C. You go and tell your CEO, I want to do let's say you're working with a TCS or an Infosys, and you go and tell your CEO that I want to do a topical current content around Dasera. He's going to say no, right? So you wouldn't see an Infosys wishing people on Baisakhi or Pongal, right? They might do it at an employee level, but at an organization level, they don't do it, which is what fundamentally makes B2B different, right? So I think whatever he has mentioned that, and I think from what I remember is around creating content that the community will like and the community will then propagate it. That's what he's trying to say. But some of it might not work for B2B marketing. So that's what I said, right? You have different frameworks, right? You have Spaghetti framework. There is the hub and spoke model. There is topic cluster by HubSpot, right? All these frameworks are good, right? But when you come into an organization, you will have to understand how that organization works and adopt that model for what works for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so even I want to ask one question. So being a copywriter, like a content marketer as well, so I just want to ask, like, how many keywords should you target for a homepage? Like as a kind of a primary keyword as well as like secondary keyword. So how many keywords should we target for that?
So I think a single page should not have more than 2 focus keywords. If you're using something like a Yoast, and as I'm assuming you're on WordPress, you should not have more than 2 focus keywords. I'll tell you what happens. You would only use one focus keyword, right? But if you're writing, let's say, a 2000 word article or a 3000 word article or a 4000 word article, Google will automatically fetch a lot of other keywords and phrases that the page should rank for.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to sort of find that is when you're writing a piece of content, you found a focus keyword. Right now, go and look for that particular keyword. What pages are ranking for that particular keyword? You will find the first 2 or 3 results. Pick the URL of that keyword, plug that into Ahrefs, and Ahrefs will tell you what other related keywords and phrases that page is ranking for. Right? The exercise, you are doing that exercise because you don't want to pigeonhole your page to one focus keyword. Because what happens a lot of times is that एक focus keyword ले लिया, you put that into title h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, you plug that into the body, you plug that into the image alt tag, right? But sometimes what you do is you pigeonhole yourself for that only for that keyword, and उस keyword का volume होगा, let's say 1000 search volume होगा उसका.
Yeah.
And the first, even if you rank number 1 for that particular keyword, you'll get 30% of all the hits. right? So the first query gets 30%, the second gets 15, third gets 15,
CTR.
and जैसे नीचे जाता है वो कम होते जाता है, right? But if you only focus on one keyword, you're pigeonholing yourself to that particular keyword. So what you should do is look for other pages which rank for it. What related keywords and phrases they are ranking for, वो तुम Ahrefs में जाके निकाल सकते हो, right? And then include some of those variations in your copy. You don't necessarily have to tell Yoast कि यार ये second भी ले ले, ये third भी ले ले keyword, जरूरत नहीं है. Algorithm is smart, it will figure out on its own. And once the page index, depending on तुम्हारा domain authority क्या है, domain authority is very good, then in a week or two you'll get to know whether it's worked for you. If domain authority is very low, it will take you 4 to 6 weeks to discover कि क्या हुआ उसके साथ. Then you have a framework to see कि ये चल रहा है कि नहीं चल रहा. Then you can sort of templatize it, formalize it, or repeat कर सकते हो.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So I think that we are good to go now, Kritika. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions with such enthusiasm and with such detail. It was really phenomenal. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for this incredible session also. It was a great learning experience, especially with the case studies and like how you can replicate that for other firms. It was great. So thank you again. And also to all the attendees, thank you so much for being an amazing audience and for sending over such amazing questions. We love such active participation. And for upcoming sessions like this, you will be notified through email, and we will see you next week with another great session like this. So thank you so much, sir. Would you like to say anything before we end the session today?
No, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job in terms of creating a community. That there are not many marketing communities that are there in India, and that's one of the reasons I started blogging way back in 2012. And ever since I've come to Bangalore, and Bombay is pretty active when it comes to marketing communities. So having something like Expert is really helpful because a lot of people have same set of questions, and if somebody can answer them, then that would be helpful. And I have my set of questions that I keep looking at other blogs and other people for answers on.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for doing your bit for the community. It means a lot. So thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, that's the end of the session today.
Thanks.
Thank you so much
Take care.
Expert, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.